financial service industry, horticulture, and the retail industry. She is currently the Chief of HR Officer at Navius and undertaking the task of people transformation and the overseas workforce of over 12,000 employees, with a network of 100 branches in Kenya. Welcome, Mary, to our webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today. Moving forward, the next panelist we have is Ms. Lillian. She is a renowned human resource director with more than 15 years of experience. During this time, she has also made considerable contribution to policy formulation, talent management, workforce planning, coaching, mentoring, and culture management, among other HR agendas in Kenya. Lillian currently serves as the Director of Human Resources at Diamond Trust Bank and sits on several boards, including the Institute of Human Resource in Kenya. We welcome you, Lillian, for our webinar today. Thank you for joining us. Moving forward to Ms. Hina, last but not the least. She has a master's in global banking and finance, and she started her career in 2005 as an intern at Diamond Trust Bank. She's been in the banking industry for over 19 years, and she's been through operations to relationship management and now in the leadership role as head of corporate business at Prime Bank. Welcome, Hina, and thank you for joining us today. So as we move towards setting the context as to what our topic is today, I'd like to begin with addressing the question of, can you share a personal example from your leadership journey where a specific mental model influenced a major HR decision you made? And did the outcome align with your ex? You can share your results. We can go ahead with anyone.
Faisal, your network is...
Lillian, would you like to go first?
No, it's okay. I'll take up that, Faisal. First and foremost, thank you very much, the Regency team, led by Faisal and Aditya. Thank you for the opportunity to get to interact with attendees, to get to learn and get to share on matters, mental models. So I'll take up that question on, and maybe my fellow panelists can chime in as we move along. One is on what examples have we encountered maybe during during the journey of leadership. So one for me, what comes to my mind straight away is on there was a time that we were trying to outsource. We were coming up with these, outsourcing the non-core business functions. And therefore, the question is, how many lives are going to be impacted? And therefore, the mental models now come in handy, because what happens is mental models shapes your thinking, they shape your perceptions, they shape the outcome and all that. So it's upon you to look at the past experiences. What have you done there before? What was the success rate? What did you do? How did you navigate the challenges and the obstacles that you faced? So based on all that, we were able now to come up with a management model, which is one of the very common model when you talk of mental models. Change management model is very, very one of the components of many models. So change management model was, or rather, is working with the A to Z of the change management, making sure from the communication, creating awareness, getting to know who are the change champions, who are the change agents, having all that in place, then you'll be able to attain or to get the outcome that the business is actually looking at. So for me, I would say the mental models, they do work, and the mental models are no longer buzzwords. They are no longer just a buzz statement. They are realities that we need to embrace as leaders. We need to go out there and be very, very confident about them, be confident and not just confident, actually keep nurturing that aspect, because there's a lot that you can do once you tap on the previous experiences. For me, it has worked, and I think it's high time. And thank you, Regency team. We need to continue having these conversations so that people can embrace, leaders can embrace mental model approaches. Thank you.
Thank you for beginning with that, and I think it was very well curated when it comes to accepting and embracing the mental models that a leader brings in through experiences and a lot of other challenges that they face in life over the career course. I request Ms. Sina if you would like to add something on this question.
Thank you, Lillian, and thank you, Faiza. I think, Lillian, you really, we've seen some of the things you've been doing. And yes, exactly how you've put it. Mentoring, empowering, really looking to how we as leaders can bring in new leaders for tomorrow is really what we want. And I think that's the whole purpose of this discussion today. So really, this is, you'll see it in our discussion going forward. And we're hoping that this is the outcome. Leaders for tomorrow. This is what we want to build on today.
Great. Thank you, Hina, for adding that to that. Moving forward, I'd like to add on to what we already discussed and would like to understand, can you elaborate on how a leader's mental model about risk can influence their decision-making during business negotiations or strategic planning?
Thanks, Faiza. So strategic planning is arguably the most important job of the leader. We make sure the day-to-day actions of the company line up with our overall mission of the company. If you're involved in business, you already know how complex decision-making can be. However, the role of the leader is on another level altogether. This is the pinnacle of strategic planning, and we must face entirely new challenges every day. I believe first step for the leader is setting out what we want to achieve. Before making any day-to-day business decisions, we must make choices about the nature of the company we want to run. Although the aim of the leader should always be to achieve the company's goal, there is no single right way to do this. There are numerous different approaches we take to business management. Some leaders like to innovate policy, while others have faith in trusted methods. This depends on the nature of the company, the leader's experience, and the people they have around them. Now we get to the active parts of the decision-making process. There is always a balance between risk and reward strategy. And the leader should be intensely aware of this. Adapting a forward-thinking attitude will allow us to drive the company to achieve its potential. This does not necessarily mean making reckless choices. This means knowing when to take the right risk. Many leaders are scared to gamble, in case their shareholders are dissatisfied, but it can't always work. To establish a good long-term strategy, risk should be taken in moderation. Of course, this is partly dependent on the size of the organization. For a small board, there's a much clearer limit to how much risk can be taken. Still, the leader should approach decisions with an eye to the future and what they can do for the company. Whatever tactics you use, a forward-thinking approach will inspire members of your senior leadership, I believe.
Thank you, Hina, for really putting that well when it comes to aligning the best decision for the organization, definitely keeping the business at priority, the nature of the organization, and then kind of working towards how can you deal with a particular risk that the team is going to face. Thank you so much for your response on that. We welcome Ms. Mary. She had a bit of technical English, but now she is back with us. And Ms. Mary, since with all the experience and work you've been doing over the course of years, I'd like to ask you, how might a leader with a growth mindset approach challenges differently from a leader with a fixed mindset?
Thanks, Faiza. I've finally been able to log in. I think first, I do not think there's a place today in today's world for a leader with fixed mindsets. Everything has changed. The way we work, the way we respond to needs of our teams, and but for a leader with a growth mindset, some of the things I would suggest that they actually do would be, one, just to view all challenges as opportunities for growth, which is really essential towards any mastery. Looking at a challenge and seeing how it grows you as an individual, etc. The second thing is just to adapt response to failure as lessons learned. You know, what is it? What did we do here? How would we have done it differently? What is it we learned then from actually doing it the way we did it? And this actually really does spark growth both for the teams and for the leader themselves. Mostly also just seeking out feedback aggressively. I believe that really feedback is a tool for champions. Seeking it out, viewing it as a valuable input for improvement, having a very different approach. I think now, I mean, if you have a small child today can actually, I mean, they are today very outspoken. I'm not sure what they're eating, but they are more outspoken. We are very glad to actually receive this kind of feedback from them. As a leader, also placing yourself in this situation where not only you're seeking, but your approach to feedback actually is one that is much positive, really does support you in having a growth mindset. There also, the other thing I would suggest really is just long-term planning, having the flexibility and adaptability to improve and change as things change. You know, so first, let's have long-term planning, but let's also have a lot of adaptability around the things that are in our environment. Therefore, we actually embrace that we can have a much better growth mindset. But also, lastly, just encouraging experimentation, whether it is guided experimentation like POCs, but also ensuring that we recognize risk-taking as part of developing new solutions. So encourage it as part of performance management, encourage it as part of good team playing, encouraging it as, you know, giving it actually much more value, both risk-taking and innovation, so that everyone else can embrace it. And I see this as the way the leaders would actually be able to grow during these challenging times.
Great, thank you, Ms. Mary. I think it was great how you put the perspective and brought about the part of experimentation. I think that's really important in today's time for leaders, managers, to kind of bring it down to employees as well. And also on the forefront when they experiment and take those risks, which turn out a lot of times good for business. If not, then that's a great learning initiative for them. So thank you so much for putting that answer really well. Moving forward to Ms. Lillian, I'd like to understand from you that given the potential of the workforce that is changing and how the industry is evolving as well, how can leaders utilize mental models when making talent acquisition and restructuring decisions?
Good question there, Faisal. I think what I've seen work is more of just maintaining your curiosity. As a leader, you cannot afford not to be curious. You need to keep learning. You need to stay abreast with what is happening. So if the workforce is changing, the workplaces are changing, it is upon you to also get to know how do you move forward. So in as much as you're talking of the mental models being about past experiences, what you've done there before, but also being ahead, learning what might be needed is also quite important. So for me, what I'll talk about is curiosity. Instead of reinventing a wheel, number two would be instead of reinventing the wheel is already there. What you need to do is just bump it up and have it better, as opposed to inventing a new wheel. So they say curiosity kills a cat. Don't worry, let the cat be dead, but you are curious. I think the curiosity for me works better in terms of just what is happening and being alert. You cannot afford not to be alert when you are embracing the mental models. Mental model needs that alertness. So this did not work. So how come you want to move forward with it? What were the lessons learned? Because again, don't forget, some might actually be lessons for you. They're not failures. I don't believe in failures. There could be lessons that you learned. So what lessons did you learn? What can you do better? If it's customers' feedback, what is the feedback? What was not liked? What did they like? How do you improve the product? If it's an employee perspective, maybe what initiatives did they like? What did they like? And therefore, how do you move forward? So for me, I'll still talk about curiosity, number one. Number two is just being alert and being aware of the environment, and actually also embracing business acumen, because the moment you know the business acumen inside out, irrespective of your profession, then you're also able to now embrace the mental models within your organization. Remember, organizations are different. What might work for this organization one might not work for organization B. So as you're doing all that also with alertness as a leader, you're able to know what might work for my industry, might not work for Mary's industry. What might not have worked for maybe organization A, maybe the organization from where Ina is, Prem Bank, might not work for me at DTB. So at the end of the day, it's just being curious, being alert, and taking cognizance of the changes that are happening vis-a-vis the precedents that have been set there before.
Great, thank you, Ms. Lillian, for I think sharing what has worked out for you well, and I think a lot from the audience can pick up and then give their trials at it, as well as leaders can pick up to now always being curious about what's happening. So thank you so much for responding on that. Moving forward, Ms. Sinha, we'd like to understand from you that thinking about the innovation required to address the challenges that are there, what do you think as a leader can use mental model about collaboration to impact their approach for effective teams and encouraging diverse perspectives as well?
Thank you, Faiza. And this is where I think the likes of Mary and Lillian play a big role in our industry. I think the hiring process of people is a risk factor for us. So hiring process is a good place to start when establishing this. When positions are filled by the right people, I believe the organization thrives. We know how important it is to diversify the workplace. And if it becomes where it's important for us, with a diverse team, the leader can set the right tone for the company going forward. We can choose the right skill, and we know how to prioritize all our roles. So having the right team, I believe, is a crucial risk factor. Training this team, and that's why I said Lillian and Mary play a big role when this when a question like this is put on. Training, I believe, and having the right team is what I'd like to focus on here.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Sinha, for sharing that with us. I think very rightly mentioned, having the right team, I think really works well for the business. I think it can just pick up and thrive as fast as possible with the correct team at the correct positions at that time. So thank you so much for responding on that. We'd like to address some open questions and to just gather a few examples from our panelists over here on common mental models that we encountered in the workplace, over the years and now in the current workspace as well. If you want to just share a few examples.
I think one of the one of the most common one, maybe which especially employees would recognize, is the halo effect, where an employee's recognition of a recent performance trumps a lot of other things, and employees would say, "Oh, this was just a one-off." Or rather, their need to be recognized for a one-off performance then becomes almost an institutional glory. Do you remember how I made this? Do you remember how 5 years ago when I came, I changed this? Do you remember? So the employee almost becomes fixated on a glory. But remember, organizations are ever evolving. Organizations are ever requiring much more innovation. And employees should hold themselves to the next victory, so that then they are moving the organization forward. So this is both as a leader myself and also for employees and organizations to really be cognizant of this mental mode, both even at leadership level, where we have perhaps made a transformation that is great. Then we should be seeking to find what next do we do to make sure our organizations are getting greater, and not to premise ourselves or to then now operate from that level of greatness that we actually perform. So I think this is something we see, especially now in the emerging markets, where there's a lot of speed that is required and a lot of growth that needs to be accelerated in organization.
Great. Thank you so much, Mary. Thank you for responding on that. Lillian and Hina, if you would like to add something.
Yeah, maybe Faisal, I'll talk about, just to add on to what Mary has talked about on that model. Another model that is very common in our workplace is the agile mindset, whereby things keep changing. You can't afford to have a mindset or a workforce that is so fixated. So what has worked today might not work tomorrow. A customer might need a totally different product. What you've sent out to the market, what you've released to the market might not be actually speaking to their needs. So it's upon you, the leadership, to have that very fast rate of making sure that you're able to respond in a flexible manner, in a speedy manner, to come up with whatever they're looking for. So if you ask me, I think agile mindset is very common in organizations, especially right now. It is more common, it is more needed than there before, as opposed to many years back where one product would work for even 10 years without being changed. We've seen brands today, the brand is green, like Regency. You are green today. After 2 years, you might come back, you want to do red. Things are changing. And look at the innovation. What is working today is not working tomorrow. So I think agile mindset is one common mental model that is out there in almost all organizations for us to continue being relevant, for us to continue being profitable. Agile mindset cannot be missed out. Another model, mental model that I'll think about is the inversion principle model. So this inversion is whereby you think of the worst scenario. What you're more of, you're starting with the beginning in mind. So you want to roll out maybe a product or initiative, but what's the worst that can happen? So you work on that worst case scenario as you come back, as opposed to just diving into the market. You're already seeing, what if I do this? What if this happens? And therefore, how do I navigate? How do I mitigate the risk and all that? So that inversion model also is very common, and especially in the banking industry, whereby you think with the end in mind, as opposed to just rolling out all the initiatives. And even that stuff, you can also look at how to have that inversion model approach. And maybe a third one that I would think of top of mind is just change management model. For me, that is it's something that we all need to thrive, or maybe not just thrive, but understand it and embrace it in a whole. You need to understand the A to Z of the change management model. The world is changing. The world is not static. If the world is changing, the world is that fast moving, then it means you need to understand the A to Z of that kind of approach, whereby there is that awareness. You want to do a change, create awareness. Identify your agents. Identify your change champions. Work with, how do you even make sure, if it's maybe, let's say, maybe you're downsizing. If you're downsizing, who are the people affected? Have you talked to them? Are they aware? If they're not receptive, how do you manage the whole process until you attain the end results that you're looking at? So for you to be successful as a leader, you cannot afford not to embrace change management model as one of your mental models in place. So those are three that are top of mind. But if I think of any, I'll add. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lillian. Thank you for adding to that. Bettina, if you'd like to add something to it.
Maybe I just want to give an example as to what Mary and Lillian has said in terms of adapting change. And I think the pandemic is a very big example as to what we can use. We didn't know COVID would hit us, those 3 years down, and how many things would change, and how the banking industry in a whole changed. We were working from home, offices were shut, people were sick. We had to manage with 2 staff, 3 staff. We learned to manage in different ways. So I think adapting to change and the situations that are coming our way now going forward. I mean, COVID was just an example. There's many other things that are coming into play that constantly keeps telling us to educate or to adjust or to move forward. There's always something that's telling us something has to work differently in the future. So COVID, yes, definitely played a very big role where, people learned to adapt to change.
Great, thank you, Hannah. I think it was a wonderful example, which I think everybody today on the call will be able to connect, because that change hit the entire world, and yet everything kept going in some or the other capacity, evolving and moving around. So thank you so much to all three of you, I think, for putting and sharing a few examples on how mental models really work in the workspace in the evolving time. Ms. Mary, I'd like to ask you, adding to these questions, as to what is your understanding when it comes to mental models, and how do they influence decisions when it comes to HR as a function, since they are the stakeholders and the function that is managing all the people in the organization?
Now, mental models are mini guides in your brain. there are patterns that you have picked over periods of time, and these then patterns usually support you in making decisions. When you see something, perhaps when you see a white car, a white something white, you associate with purity, white, like something clean. These are patterns we've created over time, and we've picked them in different various areas. Sometimes they are helpful, sometimes they are not. But if you look at HR specifically, because HR people, just for your information, are actually human. Did you know that? So they are as affected by biases as any other person. And if you look, for example, at recruitment, if, for example, a practitioner prioritizes cultural fit over diversity, then you find that their hiring decisions could mean that everyone in the organization look the same. They hire people who look like they represent this brand or who look like this brand. But if they are their mental mode or their interpretation has been guided by diversity, right? You find then they're very vocal around it. They want to bring as diverse a community as possible. Of course, there's pros and cons to each, whether you bring people who are like, but perhaps that then disadvantages the organization, because then everyone thinks and believes and hears and feels the same, therefore could stifle innovation in the organization. However, some industries perhaps would require very little change, therefore perhaps bringing a like number of people is good. The other areas, like I talked earlier, is the halo effect, where performance reviews can be affected. A manager might rate an employee overall performance just based on a simple successful recent project, and also an employee might expect to be rated positive project. Again, this stifles the need for improvement, consistent employee performance management, and etc. The other area is really around reward and benefits. If you look at the Maslow laws, and if a leader's skew is around the Maslow effect, you'll find that the HR person might actually be influenced in how they see motivation and satisfaction. I think we're in the area of comp and ben is where we've seen a lot of challenge or a lot of new, where, for example, now we are talking about bundled benefits, where employees then are given a raft of benefits and then they are required to pick from there, unlike what we had before. So again, this is an area where an opinion of a HR practitioner might actually skew them to seeing benefits in a particular way. Also, decisions around training and development opportunities. For instance, if there's an underlying assumption that old people are less adaptable to technology, younger people might then be preferentially chosen for tech-related training programs. If there is the thinking that you're wasting money by training people who might leave your organization, then you find that it almost becomes a token of appreciation to be trained in an organization. So HR people might be biased to then deal with people in a very different way. Instead of saying we are going to develop both for ourselves, for the country, for the world, more than just for the business itself. We see also issues around conflict, a mental model around conflict resolution. So such as whether conflict is inherently negative. Is it negative or is it an opportunity for growth? So depending on how it is interpreted by the HR practitioner, it then determines how HR mediates disputes, but also how HR facilitates communication between parties. And I think when we talked about the leader with the growth mindset, we discussed conflict also as part of feedback, because conflict then tells you that people are either unhappy or happy around a particular issue. So the mental mode around that about conflict resolution can actually really skew HR practitioners' ability to either solve or resolve a particular conflict. But as we know now, organizations are premised on change. It is the certain, it is the K, the constant. How HR approaches organizational change also is guided largely by mental models. And I think Lillian has largely talked about the restructuring of an organization. So how should change be managed? Is really a consequence of how does the HR reinterpret even the change. Does HR interpret change as negative? So therefore, how do they manage it? Is there a lot of secrecy around it? Is there a lot of gagging around it? Who should be involved at what point, especially timing. In fact, in HR, we say sequencing is it's a critical, because one wrong move at the wrong time can actually bring everything to a close. And these mental modes, especially around change management, can really affect change initiatives. We've come from the age of top-down to more collaborative conversation. So by the time an employee is experiencing change, they should have actually been part and contributors to that change. So HR people should not be posing surprise factors to employees. This should be a continuous conversation. Organizations should involve their employees so that they're able to know when they're moving, when they're not, when there's a slow in that movement, when there's a necessity to actually make the move. And therefore, this constant conversation will really support and the leaders with this particular way of view of things will support the organizational change initiatives. So these are the areas I see where mental moves do affect HR practitioners, but also that their understanding, their knowledge would support HR practitioners actually to understand why they think the way they think and what they need to maybe change or correct around their mental health.
Thank you, Mary, so much. I think this really put a good perspective as to the audience and the people on call who are not from the HR background, but this just gives a great understanding for them to get their perspective as to why those decisions are made and why those certain steps are taken for the organization and for the people. So thank you so much for that. Moving forward, Lillian, we'd like to understand from you that in your experience, what are some of the strategies that leaders can use to challenge their own mental models and assumptions, especially when it comes to, the workspace and the teams and the talents that they're kind of onboarding?
Good question, Faisal. I think what comes to my mind is one would be continuous learning. That is one of the many ways that you can challenge the status quo. So for leaders, I think we need to nurture, or rather embrace, the continuous learning kind of approach. And I think continuous learning is also a model on its own, whereby it's more of what you've learned today might not be relevant tomorrow, might not help you to navigate or to carry out your work and your function. So continuous learning for me, it's very key. It's one of the many ways of making sure that you challenge the status quo. Another way of doing it, the initiatives that leaders can come up with, as opposed to just in addition to the continuous learning, would be just creating that, what Mary has talked about, collaborations. The more you collaborate, the more you partner, the more you work together, the more you're able to address issues or challenges that are also lying in other departments and other functions. So for me, right now, you cannot afford to work alone, to work in silos. Right now, you need to challenge that kind of an environment so that you're able to dig down deeper. Besides that, also, there's a way you can get feedback when you collaborate. There's a way you collect feedback when you partner with other not just even from within, even externally. We need to be more curious, and as leaders, we need to actually not just operate from within, not just confine ourselves from, to work amongst ourselves. It's high time also to check on what are the other industry peers or your industry colleagues are also working on. So for me, I think what I think of in terms of challenge, what comes to mind if you're to address the challenges is continuous learning. You need to address the issue of obtaining feedback from the organization and working closely with both external and internal peers, colleagues, so that you're able to address all the issues that you're foreseeing. Besides that, Faisal, remember, mental models are not kind of, I think they're more of, they're frameworks, and therefore they have worked before. These are scenarios that have been tested and tried, but it does not stop us from actually going back and questioning and seeing what worked, what did not work, so that we can make it better. The fact that it worked 5 years back might not make it work right now, because what was relevant in 5 years back might not be relevant right now. And therefore, even the mental models, we need to keep changing. If you look at the hierarchy of needs model, that's another very key one for me as HR professional. What I look at is what was very pertinent or very key to employees 5 years back is no longer the same. Right now, people are not talking about their provident fund, their pension funds. People are talking about how much am I getting right now today. You're looking at the workforce who are not interested about retiring. Therefore, the hierarchical needs or the hierarchy of needs model is very key for me, and I'm very passionate about in terms of just reviewing it from time to time, where I'm saying what worked 5 years back might not work now, might not work for the next generation and all that. So we keep reviving in as much as it worked there that time, or maybe many years back, Faisal, maybe we need to straighten up that. Yes, they work, there were frameworks that are working, but we need to refresh. We need to keep looking at them and refreshing them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lillian. I think it was very well put. And the way you ended it, that how employees' needs have changed from what it was to what it is now. And I think it will keep evolving in the future years as well, with the new workforce that is going to join us maybe for a lot of organizations in the next few months. And then we'll keep going with the whole bootcamp training and everything for them. So I think it is very important to kind of keep that need being changed so that you don't lose on the best talents, and you can also provide your employees with the best facilities that they need. So I think thank you so much for responding to that. Now we'd like to address an open question as to how can leaders create a safe space of open communication and diverse viewpoints for their teams, because teams that are from cross-cultural backgrounds, teams that come from different mindsets, as mental models already are something that is there in your mind through your experiences. And when you have a new team that is being created, they come with their own set of mental models and experiences. So how does a leader kind of create that safe space of open communication to bring in diverse viewpoints from their teams, and also as a team for them to embrace each other's opinions and models that they bring in? And it's an open question, so anyone can go ahead with it.
I think, Faisal, if we tackle the onboarding process properly, the A to Z of the onboarding process, then the issue of assimilating the new employees will be very easy, because you are able to express your values, your mission, your vision. So I think that learning curve that comes with the new employees or the new entrants getting into your organization will be shortened. Another way would be maybe, Faisal, if you think of maybe onboarding and just check-ins. Check-ins is whereby you get to do follow-ups with the new ones and even the existing staff, so that you don't lose anyone along the way. Because you might be thinking you are doing so well, yet because you're not listening to the sound of the river, Faisal, you are there on your, maybe I don't know which tower, yet what is going on in your branches you're not even aware of. So I believe in listening to the sound of the river. That is a way of making sure that you are connected and everybody is being carried along. So onboarding and frequent check-ins will really shorten that the gap that we might be experiencing as leaders. Most of the time as leaders, we are too busy, we are too engrossed, we end up not listening to the sound of the river, and we have these kind of gaps from time to time. So mental models, we need to align that with what is happening. I hope I addressed your question. Maybe my colleagues can also come in.
Yeah, I think you did address the perspective of how you have taken the approach towards it by bringing the views and beliefs and the vision as to the forefront of when you're bringing in a new team, whichever diverse backgrounds they come from. So I think, yeah, that was very helpful. Thank you so much, Lillian. It's open for Hina and Mary to add now if they'd like to.
I think providing them job security is also very important. You know, they need to be welcomed, secured. Having this fear of no support, having this fear of failure, it plays a really big role when it comes to mental health. So I think that's also very important, you know, when you're bringing them on board from different cultures, as much as you're embracing them, give them the support, give them the job security, give them what they require, the resources, give them what they require so that they can become or be what they have endeavored to become. So I think that's also very important, just providing them that security.
That's so true, Hina. Thank you so much for bringing that up. I think there's a big with the new generational employees that are coming in, this big gap of safe place, safe security, and lasting in a job for more than 2 years. So thank you so much for bringing that up and how leaders can kind of pick up on it and keep maintaining that for their workforce. Thank you so much. Mary, if you'd like to add something.
I think for me, really, it's just modeling it. Model openness, model. Share your thoughts, share your uncertainty openly with your team, but also normalize the mistakes. The young people, and we've seen them, they're in our homes. We see them once. If a child breaks something and then you scream on top of your lungs, then the next time they actually break it, they will not even let you know that they broke it. So I think for us as leaders is really to normalize mistakes, to make sure that we are modeling that which we are saying, talking, walking the talk. And I guess this will support in really creating safe spaces for the people we lead.
Great, thank you so much, Mary. I think that definitely is a very important area of how do leaders then embrace, when you give your team the freedom to have the exploration, it's also important to kind of embrace the learnings from that and also accept what didn't work for the organization. So thank you so much for bringing that up. Ms. Hina, I would like to understand from you now, what resources would you recommend for leaders to kind of develop a more growth-oriented and adaptable mindset? Since you come from the business space and you understand how strategic decisions really impact and are important in this changing business environment. So a few tips and tricks if you could recommend the leaders to kind of, develop that growth-oriented space.
Sure. Thanks, Faiza, for this question. Developing a growth mindset is not easy, but of course it is possible. I'll share some strategies that leaders can use to develop a growth mindset. I believe embrace challenge. Leaders should embrace challenge and view them as opportunities and learn and grow. They should not be afraid of making mistakes and failing. Instead, they should use these experiences to improve their skills and knowledge. For instance, look at Jeff Bezos. The founder of Amazon faced countless challenges and setbacks throughout his career, but he always embraced them as opportunities to learn and grow. Today, Amazon is one of the most successful companies in the world, and he himself is the wealthiest person on the planet today. Learn from failure. Leaders should learn from their failures and mistakes. They should analyze what went wrong and what could have been done differently. They should use this information to improve the performance in their future. Again, we look at Steve Jobs, was fired from Apple in 1985. He used this failure as an opportunity to learn and grow. He went on to start Next and eventually returned to Apple to lead the company to new heights of success today. Seek feedback. I believe seeking feedback is very important. Leaders should seek feedback from their peers. They should be open to constructive criticism and use it to improve their skills and knowledge. Encourage learning. We always say encourage learning, training. In every meeting we have, we're always talking about training. Leaders should encourage learning, growing amongst their teams. They should provide opportunities for their teams to learn new skills and knowledge. They should also lead by example and demonstrate a growth mindset. Stay positive. Leaders should stay positive and optimistic. They should focus on the opportunities rather than the obstacles. They should also surround themselves with positive and supportive people. Build and support network, I believe, is a very key point in our career as we work under the business environment. Leaders should build support network of friends, family, colleagues, good mentors. They should have people they can turn to for advice, guidance, emotional support. Practice self-care, and I emphasize again, self-care. Leaders should practice self-care by getting enough sleep, eating healthy, exercising regularly. They should also take breaks and vacations to recharge. Stay focused. Leaders should stay focused on their goals and priorities. They should avoid distractions and time-wasting activities. Be adaptable. Leaders should adapt, be flexible. They should be able to adjust to their plans, new strategies when faced with unacceptable changes. I mean, just like we discussed, with what happened during the pandemic, you should be able to adjust to new changes. And I believe that's what builds the leaders for tomorrow.
Faisal, you're on mute. Faisal?
Okay, I'm so sorry. Got it back. But thank you so much, Hina. I think you put it very well when it comes to a leader kind of transitioning, because definitely it's not easy to get growth mindset over a day's time. But I think it's the practices and habits that you build over the course of time that helps you become the kind of leader that you want to be. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. We have a question by the audience. Thank you for sharing it with us, Lorna. Her question is that do you think corporate governance can contribute to the leadership model in discussion today? And it's an open question for all our speakers.
I think that's a good question from Lorna there. First and foremost, like I said before, one organization might have different type of mental models, different totally from another organization, yet they're in the same industry. The same case goes to governance. The corporate governance has a lot to do with the corporate, or rather the mental models. So what might be applicable in my bank, Diamond Trust Bank, might not be applicable to Prime Bank, where Hina is, or Naivas Limited, where Mary is. It depends with the board. The board also has a part to play. The corporate governance has a lot to do with that. And then also the size of the organization, Faiza and Lorna, the size of the organization also might not allow you to actually explore all the mental models that are there in the planet. And again, the type of maybe the board members that you have, maybe some of them, they are, they have a way of thinking. They maybe they can't. There's a blurry area between the management and the board itself. So those kind of things will have a very big impact on how you conduct yourself, the mental models that are allowable, and the practices that you can put in place as leadership in that particular organization. So it's upon you, the leader, to be flexible enough, to be agile enough, to get to learn the language of your corporate governance as a whole, or the language of your board or your composition, so that you're able to know what works and what is not working, and what you can float and what you can't. Because again, you can't just go and, there's a lot of, at the end of the day, the buck stops with the board. That one you have to accept. So there is a direct correlation. If you ask me, there's a very big correlation between the two.
Thank you so much, Lillian. Thank you for responding to that. The question is open to Hina and Mandy as well, if they'd like to add in.
I think Lillian's covered it pretty well. There's just pretty much no other way that you can put it.
That's true. Mary, do we have you back?
Yes, I lost my face, but I guess I'm still here. So I think for me, like Lillian said, governance is really the back and on which the organization actually thrives. The mental modes of the people on the governance level will affect the organization, right? Their biases will affect the organization. So the organization has, through its governance body, has to create its personality. What is the person of the organization? How does that person want to associate or rather create new models? And then based on that, communicate, I guess, through onboarding, like Lillian said, ensure that everyone speaks and thinks the same way, perhaps, or along the same lines with the similar biases. So this, it actually can be part of this conversation. It is part of this conversation because, again, people sitting in governance are also humans who are susceptible to biases. So yes, I would say this is critical.
Thank you so much, Mary, for your response. Lorna, I think we could answer your question in the best capacity by our speakers today. But thank you so much for raising that question. We have a few more minutes before we wrap up. So I think we'd like to take up one more question that would be on lines with two different mindset of leaders. So how might a leader with a strong focus on ethics navigate this challenge differently from a leader with a primarily profit-driven mindset when it comes to the current space and environment that we're working in?
Sorry, Faisal?
Can you all hear me?
I think we missed, I missed the last bit. I'm sorry about that. You can.
No, not sure. I'll repeat the question. So the question that we're taking is, how might a leader with a strong focus on ethics navigate this change differently from a leader with a primarily profit-driven mindset?
I think, Faisal, what a leader needs to do or embrace is whatever values you stand for, especially the values of your organization, because by the time you're joining that organization, what must have drawn you there is maybe their values, their mission, their vision. And therefore, whether there are changes in terms of maybe profit-based, maybe it's an ethical issues that are coming up, maybe there are things that are going against your values as a person, then it's upon you to remind yourself what you stand for and what you came to do. So once you know that and you strongly believe about your values and you strongly and the self-beliefs and all those that we talk about, I don't think you'll be able to tweak yourself to match those unethical behaviors. So what you can do as a leader is continue educating people, continue creating awareness about your values. So your values, maybe it's excellence, integrity, maybe it's respect, maybe all those nice things that we do have in the organizations. But we end up practicing what you're talking about, the ethical behaviors and maybe the profit through cutthroat kind of approach. I think as a leader, you should be very steadfast. Integrity should be your bread and butter, and therefore there is no instead of you being swayed, the only thing you can do is being focused and continue driving that agenda through maybe creating awareness, through trainings, through constant kind of conversations. But you being swayed into the unethical behavior because it's just a mental model that everybody is embracing, I think should be a no-no. As a leader, you should be able to be very firm. Remember, we can all be very empathetic, very warm, but what you cannot lose is to lower your guard. What you cannot lose is to become, to get into the other side that you are not really comfortable with for the sake of making everybody happy. Because integrity for me is very key. So, Faisal, my answer would be stay focused, irrespective of the unethical issues that are coming up. And if you can, Faisal, speak up so that at least everybody gets to understand your standpoint, or everybody gets to understand your perspective. Because again, don't just say no, or don't just walk away. You're walking away, you're saying no, but why am I saying no? So I need to convince my peers, I need to convince my stakeholders that actually my saying no is because of A, B, C, D, and this is the other route. So explaining yourself, getting people to get into your corner, very, very, it's an important way of having a win-win situation.
Thank you so much, Lillian. I think this was very well put when it comes to two different mindset of leaders. The question is open to Maddie or Hina if you'd like to add anything to this as well.
So where we come from, the banking industry, obviously there's no way, there's no ethical leader. We have to have ethics in what we're doing. All we do is establish good, clear, ethical guidelines. I think that's the only thing a good leader can follow. And the rest, becomes more effective from there.
That's so true. Thank you so much. I think not just for the banking sector, I think yeah, that's so true. Yeah.
Cesar, maybe if I could just add on to what my colleague, what Hina has talked about. Most of the time, you find that if you express yourself and you are able to explain, or maybe you are able to support your no, or maybe you're able to, you're able to go deeper why you are not comfortable with that, whatever is being done, people will tend to understand you. But what happens is most leaders is my way, no way, my way or highway. So that attitude also becomes very difficult. So always support whatever you're trying to put across. So you're walking away from this practice I'm walking away from this process, from this idea, from this decision. But as you're walking away, why are you doing that? What is not correct? So that at least also you are able to navigate, you're able to mitigate future kind of those kind of scenarios. So I still believe you need to explain yourself. You need to put everybody in your corner. But the only way you can put everybody in your corner is for them to understand your perspective. So are you showing us your perspective? Are you discussing with us? Are you collaborating? Are you partnering with us? But it cannot be your way or highway. So I hope that is clear also. We need to be very confident in our own way. This is the way. The way is this because of ABCD. So that because the why is very important.
Exactly. I think, Ian, and that's what we were saying, listening as a leader, communicating and allowing people's perspective is also very important. So yes, exactly to your point.
Thank you so much, Lillian. Thank you, Hina, for adding to that as well. Mary, do you have something to share on this?
I think the two ladies have exhausted very well. So thank you, Faiza.
Thank you, Mary. With that, I think we'd like to wrap up our webinar for today. I think it was extremely great and insightful, but this is a discussion that can go on for hours, but we'd like to keep it kind of crisp so that our audience as well acquire the knowledge and the tips and tricks that we're trying to share them when it comes to mental models and leadership. I think we kind of touched based on functions and the people that actually handle the people in the organization, the arm that looks after everything, their perspective and their challenges when it comes to people understanding where they come from. We kind of put forth as to the banking sector as well as other sectors and what their perspectives bring in. So once in the last time, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today on this webinar. And last but not the least, thank you to our panelists for joining us today and sharing all their experiences, tips and tricks, recommendations that leaders can pick up when it comes to overcoming their own mental models, as well as working with people that come and bring their own mental models, and how to kind of keep the car going when it comes to the business and everything. Last but not the least, thank you for Aditya for kind of organizing the entire piece together. And thank you everyone for joining in. This is Regenesis Corporate Education, and you can stay tuned in for our upcoming webinars on all social media platforms. And you can reach out to us as well if you'd be interested in being one of the panelists, and also bring in your own topic for one of the webinars that we host in the future days coming. Thank you once again, and we will stay in touch with you.
Thank you, Faiza.
Thank you, Faiza.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Faiza. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Aditya.
Thank you. Bye.